I stumbled onto a major company conspiracy.
What you stumbled upon goes way deeper than you could ever fathom.
What the hell are you talking about?
Listen and learn. Listen and learn. Listen and learn.
You gonna learn today?
I offer them whatever help I can.
Pay attention, son.
Millions of people across the world, okay? You got judges, lawyers, politicians, entertainers, police officers, doctors, taxi drivers. Millions of people all across the world from all different walks of life are under total mind control. Now, who's mind controlling these people? Well, I'll tell you. It's MKUltra is where it comes from. This is a project that started in 1953, right? And supposedly it ended in 1973. But if you look at the documents and you do some research into it and you listen to the testimonies of mind control victims, this stuff is still going on. There's a spider web of projects that have come out since MKUltra that stem from it. Now, basically what happens is you have to fracture the mind at a young age. And what you do is through the use of trauma, satanic ritual abuse, and LSD, hallucinogenic drugs, you can create altars through trauma, through abuse. You create an altar. And what it does is you're able to program the altar. Now, if you want somebody to be an assassin, you could program that altar to be an assassin. So what happens is these experiments will go down and then they'll wipe the memory. So the person has no idea that they've gone through these type of experiments. They think they've lived a normal life. Now, years from now, years later in the future, a trigger word or a trigger symbol will be used to trigger the altar in the mind of the victim. Now, all of a sudden, that person is carrying out some type of criminal act or sexual act or whatever they need. And they'll have no memory or recollection of what just happened. They'll have no memory of it. So, this mind control game that's being played on the masses is very serious, because this could be happening to any one of us. And it's the only thing that we can protect ourselves against mind control with is knowledge.
And with knowledge, you gotta ask why. And that's why we are here today. It is Why is Conspiracy, episode 8. Can you believe it or not? If you've been checking us out, we want to say thank you so much. Make sure you're commenting below. Subscribe to the channel and the whole nine. We hope you've been enjoying this series. We got one more to go after this one. So if you guys want something talked about, you gotta put it in the comments on this episode, because at that point we'll be reading them and then getting ready to shoot episode 9, and we'll be able to take your comments into consideration when we shoot that episode. So please do that. But I welcome you, and I'm accompanied by my co-host. I have Monster in the building. I got Grills in the building. Gentlemen, how are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, brother.
Thank you, man. I'm glad to be here.
Grills, always starting out on fire.
We got to.
Always. You're like very militant when you started that one.
I have
to. It was like, da-da-da-da-da, mind control, So, we had a dude on the show, Miriam, and he had some really cool insight, and he was a great guest on the show, so shout out to him. And he did so well that, he, instead of ruining it for the others, he actually encouraged us and made us want to bring on another guest, right? So, for today, with this whole MKUltra idea and mind control, we brought on somebody who is pretty knowledgeable about the whole deal, right? It's a friend of yours.
Right.
Monster and I just got acquainted with him a short while ago. But we want to bring him on the show because he does have some good insight to the topic at hand today. He's interested by the topic at hand today. So that makes him a great guest. So I present to you guys, none other on the phone today is James Hart. How are you, sir?
What is happening, my brothers?
Chilling, man. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. Yeah, man. Pleasure.
Yeah, man. We got into this topic. We've been kind of flirting with this topic a little bit the last few episodes, and I feel like this one is kind of like the anchor of it all, right? So, you guys are going to be enlightening me today. You're probably going to say some things to me that are going to be like aha moments for me, I'm assuming, I don't know too much myself about the whole MKUltra thing, so everybody watching today, don't worry. I'll ask the questions that are running through your head when these guys are talking about all this stuff. So, James, why don't you just give everybody a little bit of background on where you are, where you're from, and what you've been interested in, and what you've been reading on, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I know you guys are in New York. I lived there my whole life, and I just moved to Music City, Nashville, just about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And I'm a musician. I've been doing the whole independent artist thing, doing my music and teaching full time. So I'm freelancing 100% on my own. So it's been quite a ride for the past 2 years now.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm just trying to that music dream, man. You know, it's all good.
Yeah, hell yeah. So it sounds like you got to get an interview on Finally TV, The Voice of the Valley. We got to set that up. We'll do a remote one.
Absolutely.
That's what's up. I like it. I like it. Today's topic, when Grills brought it up to you, you seemed very excited and eager to talk about it. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, well, I've been seeing this for a long time, at least a couple of years. You know, I started waking up when I was about 16, 17 years old. And then since then, especially, you know, being a musician, I know everything music. And being the progression, for me in particular, of music videos over the years, and up until recently, just how crazy symbolic it is. And Grills was talking about before, you know, MKUltra triggers through symbolism and through words as well. And that's what these music videos by the huge celebrities and singers are, especially, you know, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, just to name a few. Like, you look at some of the recent videos, just tons of symbolism. And it's there for a reason. And what I'm afraid of is that they're going after this. So MKUltra started, like you guys said, in the 50s, right? They mostly experimented on adults, right? It was just a different time. They were more interested in adults. And over time, I think it's just evolved into now they're going for the kids. And that's why I want to try to shed some light and try to wake people up to this idea, because we can't have that. Right. And it's got to stop.
Gotcha. When it comes to MKUltra, I actually asked Grills this before, and he had an answer for me, but I want to see what your answer is. MKUltra, you know, the MK ultimately stands for mind control. Why is it misspelled, or at least why is it misspelled to what I know control to be spelled as?
Well, I think, Grills mentioned it, you know, Project Paperclip, where after World War II, all the Nazis come over to the United States. And what I think happened is infiltrated the government. So the control is spelled in a German way.
Okay.
So that's why it's the K. It's spelled Kontrolle, I believe. That's a German spelling, right? So this might have to do a lot with the Nazis and basically continuing their work after they lost the war in World War II and trying to operate over here. And then that goes deep too. It's the space program, the secret space program, and all that stuff. But I think might be where it originated, or at least they got involved with it. You know,
gotcha.
Maybe our American government kind of started it because, you know, once Roswell happened, especially in '47, that's when you had the CIA and the FBI and all these government agencies. And this is a CIA operation, the MKUltra, you know, these experiments. So maybe it started with the American government, and then when the Nazis came over, they integrated into that. So I think that's really where it might have its roots.
It's very interesting stuff. So just so I can say it in layman terms, MKUltra is an umbrella project, or MKUltra was a project on its own that things just stemmed off of it?
MKUltra was the umbrella name of the project, but like our guest said, this actually does go back to Operation Paperclip. A lot of Americans don't realize the impact of what that particular thing has done to America. Operation Paperclip was bringing over Nazi scientists that worked directly with rockets, Werner von Braun, other scientists that were dissecting human beings and working on projects like that. They were all brought here to the United States. And the reason why it's called Operation Paperclip is because the scientists here in the United States chose the scientists they wanted by putting a paperclip on their file. And then they took those files and then they extracted those people from Nazi Germany before the war even ended, I might add, that they were here in America. And so that's the origins of this. And the MKUltra is the blanket title for it because there's other aspects of the project. One of them was called Artichoke, which that was dealt with the interrogation techniques, so we're in a place now where a lot of people know that we found bin Laden from what they call enhanced interrogation techniques. Well, these have their origins in the project of MKUltra, because especially the Artichoke, that's where they started figuring out that if they administer chemicals and certain techniques to people that they start talking. And ultimately, that's what this came from. So the reason why they say that they brought the Nazis here from Germany is that they wanted to be able to compete against Russia in the Cold War. Now, it's a pretty convenient excuse because there was no Cold War in 1945.
You're right.
So, and in reality, they brought these scientists here, and then all of a sudden you have Operation Artichoke, Operation MKUltra, and really, we haven't even actually gotten into what that is. I mean, the whole purpose behind it was to see if they could use drugs and chemicals like LSD and mescaline and psilocybin and cocaine and DMT to get people to potentially talk about state secrets. At first, they were using it on CIA operatives. So it was sort of like an occupational hazard to even be a CIA agent at the time, because they might spring 1,000 micrograms of LSD on you unsuspectingly, just to see how you would react during the day.
And that was actually going on too. There was a lot of CIA agents that were being dosed with LSD. I think one of them jumped out of a window. But it's
Olson.
Yes, Frank Olson, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of declassified information. Even Bill Clinton back in the 90s had to apologize for these experiments, and they admitted it. So this is not, it's a conspiracy, but it's not a theory, it's a fact.
It is a conspiracy fact.
These things happened, and it's a conspiracy fact. Now, conspiracies happen, just like hurricanes happen, tornadoes happen, conspiracies happen.
Yeah.
It's just, when you talk about this stuff, it's, for people that never heard before, it's easy to say a conspiracy, but I think it's deeper than that. It's a lot deeper than that. And when you're programming a mind, you have to traumatize the person beyond belief, almost to the point where most of these children actually died during these experiments. It's only the ones that survived that made it through and were able to go back and live normal lives with their memories erased. It doesn't. Years later, the memories will bleed through for a lot of them. That's
nightmares.
Correct.
Schizophrenia.
Right.
Multiple personalities. A lot of that stuff, I think, gets born from that kind of stuff that's done to you. James, do you have anything you want to add with what you just heard?
Yeah, well, a couple things. With the insane asylums, especially, I think that's a lot of those people that were born that had schizophrenia or maybe developed that over time, where they're experimented on, and they were brought in, and then the CIA or whoever it was, or part of the CIA, wanted to continue experiments on these people and to see how far they can really take it. And another form of how they did this, they're basically melting these people's brains, and like you said, wiping their memories. But they also did it through electroshock.
That's right.
Yep.
Which is pretty insane. And we are electromagnetic beings, so if you electrify, it desensitizes you, and it cuts off, it destroys your nerves and shit, so you can't feel anything, and that goes into your psyche as well. So that's another big part of it, electroshock therapy. A lot, especially with the cocktail of different drugs. LSD was the biggest one, and it's crazy shit.
What were some of the results from some of this stuff that's documented? Do you guys know?
Well, that's one thing that I actually was just going to bring up, because this is the part, and I want people to listen very closely here, because this part actually scares me a little bit, all right? So in researching of this, I went to look at the documents. So in 1973, the CIA destroyed the documents involved with MKUltra because it was an eyes-only operation. Nobody was supposed to ever find out that they were doing these things. So they wanted it destroyed, but 20,000 documents survived this. So there are ones that can be seen. One of the ones that can be seen is in this book here by Jesse Ventura.
Yes,
and this,
the wrestler guy.
Right, correct. But this is the scary part. This goes back to June of 1964. This is the last time this is documented of even being known. So the reason why it's documented is because they were testifying. It was the deputy director of the CIA, several high-ranking members of the government were testifying to Congress about this program and the effectiveness and what they were actually doing. And so when they asked about the LSD portion, now this was 1964. Okay, a lot of people know LSD to be from the Summer of Love of 1969, which is 5 years after this testimony in Congress. Now, Congress asked specifically why they had stopped using LSD. And they specifically said that it altered your DNA and that there were repercussions from using it that they weren't prepared to accept at this point in time. Now, how did it go from that to being openly used in society in 1969 when it's known by the people who started this program that it alters the genetic code of your body? Why did they then push it onto the society?
What was that, James?
That makes me, I'm like waving on both sides of this, because in one sense it makes sense that they would release this into the public for the purpose of mind control, right? But at the same time, if you've experienced LSD, it can have a extremely profound effect on you, and it can open your mind and actually make you aware of all this stuff that's going on, and open your eyes up to the truth, and you want to find the truth. So it's hard to say whether the argument, maybe it fell back on them. Maybe that was their initial reason for releasing the LSD into the world, even though it's always been around. You know, the ergot fungus, it's always been used back in the day.
The LSD plays a big part
for those,
because it goes back to the whole psychedelic trippiness, Alice in Wonderland, right, going down the rabbit hole.
Right.
Even a lot of the movies, where even the Wizard of Oz. That's that's a trigger movie right there.
It's basically one big trip.
Yeah, a lot of these movies are based around these triggers, these specific triggers and specific concepts that can trigger somebody if they were on LSD or if they were under, mind control. Cathy O'Brien spoke out. I guess you could put a picture right here. But Cathy O'Brien spoke out on how, because of her father, because of the stuff her father was doing, that he, was pretty much blackmailed into giving his daughter up for this, for these mind control experiments, and she was used as like a sex slave.
Wow.
And she was used, and she was at the Pentagon. She met presidents, and she knew stuff about the presidents that you wouldn't believe. And the detail that she goes in about these mind control experiments and how they traumatize these, these people at such a young age, it's really sick. And once you figure out how it's done and you start to understand that it's not all fun and games, that it's actually something very sensitive, very serious, you start to really question the integrity of the people that are supposed to be in charge of us.
Yeah.
What a interesting, intriguing topic, right? Because I always say this, we always feel like we're so in control of our own thoughts and movements and desires and stuff. And then sometimes when you hear stuff like this, you start to really question, well, yeah, why do I like wearing a Chicago Bulls jersey? And, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not from Chicago. You know what I mean?
Right.
Why am I so infatuated with Michael Jordan and the sneakers? I never really, it starts to really give you reason to question certain things. You know what I mean? So I always find that part cool. But moving on a little bit, what with mind control, right? I always want to ask this too on the show, because it's why is conspiracy, right? Why the control? Why mind control? Why even dive into MK? Why create MKUltra?
Because the perfect spy is a spy that doesn't know he's a spy.
Okay.
Exactly.
The perfect assassin is the assassin that doesn't know he's the assassin. And there was a movie that came out called The Manchurian Candidate.
I remember.
There was two of them. There was one, I think, in the 50s that came out, and then there was one with Denzel Washington that came out in the early 2000s, I think.
Correct.
So that's a movie people have to go look at if you're trying to understand the military side of these projects and how a lot of soldiers are put under these same experiments. They give you a glimpse in that movie on how it's done. But if you want to send somebody, you know, that whole concept of the Manchurian Candidate is putting a sleeper assassin in the White House. And, you know, the whole concept that somebody that he had wartime with, or somebody he was in the military with, a former war buddy, was actually the guy being mind controlled to kill him, to take him out in the movie, right? Denzel's about to go snipe the president, and then he's figuring out he's under the mind control. You know, that's not, you know, just Hollywood accidentally putting that in a movie.
Right, we've talked about that
twice.
Yeah.
Right, and there's different types of mind control. You have your assassin that you're going to send out and go shoot up a movie theater or shoot up a whatever.
Like random people.
And right, and then they have no remembrance of any of it, and they're just like in a daze, but they're the patsy. They're taking the complete fall for it, and now the agenda is complete. There's also sex slaves. A lot of and there's monarch programming as well, and the monarch programming always goes back to like the monarch butterfly. This is used as a trigger symbol because the whole concept of, you know, going into the cocoon, coming out and becoming a beautiful butterfly, right? So that's it's inverted though with the mind control. They believe that if you fracture this individual so bad that it's, you know, they're the lowest that they can go, now they're going to become this big beautiful butterfly. You see girls go and get a butterfly tattoo on them. They have no idea what they could be triggering other people that are under mind control. And they don't even know. They're just following the trend. Right. But so the monarch programming is like this. A lot of the entertainers, people that you'll see, musicians, singers. It's very sensitive because it's the. I mean, even some of the men in Hollywood go through it as well. You know, you see Shia LaBeouf with the butterflies all around him, and he's crying, and he's a mess, and he's wearing a bag over his head. Right. And, you know, these kids, these young actors, young people, they're under mind control. They're being messed with.
You know, it's interesting. I heard you say the word monarch, right? And I feel like in recent times, the secret agency or the hidden company was named Monarch. It might have been like Godzilla, to be honest with you. I feel like it was like a sci-fi movie.
You're talking about Montauk, right?
Yeah. No.
What you're talking about?
No. You said Monarch just now.
Monarch.
Like,
right,
you know what I mean?
Okay.
And like I feel like it's interesting how these words and these names of things end up being parts of movies that you see.
Yes.
Well, it's all related to what we were talking about on the last episode.
Yeah, it's all, you know.
Because what does monarch also relate to? The monarchy,
right,
which controls you on that end. So this relates back to the whole maritime law and the words and spells that we, you know, just got done talking about.
Yeah, man.
You know, the thing is that MKUltra, you know, as Grills had said, had gone from 1953 to 1973, supposedly. So a lot of people nowadays talk about how we're in an era where I can't believe there's all these school shootings and these different things are happening. And why didn't they happen in the 50s and 60s? Right. Well, the reason why is because these programs were just underway, okay? And they were just learning these things. Another one of these programs is called Project Gabriel. All right, we had talked about this the other day because you're Gabriel, obviously. So what that project was they were studying strontium-90, which is a element of radiation poisoning. And the idea behind it was maybe we could secretly, quietly radiate a whole entire army and weaken their immune system. And then when they fought against us, we could just give them a germ and kill them, right? So they started researching this, and what did they find out? They found out that because of the testing that they did in Nevada and America, that we've already lowered our immune system here. You know, and this is in the 1950s. They gave up on that project because they said, oh, okay, we're already so far gone, we can't have anybody else find out that that's our weakness now. Right. And here we are in 2020, battling immune deficiency weaknesses left and right, etc. But I wanted to bring it up more up to speed. So these MKUltra projects and stuff that we're talking about, these are the BYSS projects that led to the enhanced interrogations, the mind control. But let's bring it forward to Behold a Pale Horse, right? There's a section in this book where they talk about Project Orion, is what it's called, which is obviously related back to Orion's belt. And I don't know what the acronym stands for because they never actually said what it stands for. But in 1991, this was printed in this book that they're using this program to mind control people to what? Shoot up movie theaters and schools.
That's nice.
I could call it what you want, okay? But in 1991, movie theaters and schools weren't being shot up then.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes the direct correlation to some of these pharmaceutical drugs that are being given to children and stuff, and how that is the trigger for these things. But we had all these school shootings, right? Never once investigated any possible connection or trigger to any of them on purpose.
A lot of this too is you have to get specific people from specific bloodlines. That's also very important. And Project IBYSS and Project Oak Tree was involved in this, in finding the specific children and bloodlines for these experiments. Max Spiers talks a lot about this picture right here. Max Spiers, he spoke out a lot about his personal experience with mind control, and as far as the whole super soldier program. Now, he didn't really like the word super soldier. So people could check out Max Spiers, Sarah Adams, that was his girlfriend. They both speak a lot about this stuff. And if people want to know, you know, from another perspective, from somebody who's, you know, experienced it themselves, Max Spiers is definitely a good one to check out.
Got you.
He risked his life too, by the way, to get the information out. He risked his life. He sent a text message to his mother saying, "Your boy's in trouble. If something happens to me, investigate." And the next day he was dead. And it's still very much controversy behind his death because he was healthy and there was no reason why he should have passed away of natural causes.
Gotcha. This is what I'd like to do, and I'm probably gonna ask all three of you what the deal is. So I'll start with you, James. In your opinion, what are some examples that we have today in the modern world where, you know, MKUltra or some derivative of it has affected it, and something like an example of it today? Like, what would you say?
Well, one example is you guys were just talking about, you know, like movie shootings and all these, you know, public shootings and school shootings. And there's a really good case where there's that like crazy looking guy with or something. And when you looked at him when he was in court, he wasn't even there. Like he was totally like back to the thing where like they wipe your memory clean, where they could go carry out a task and then you don't even realize that you did that. So he probably, you know, if he's even, he looks like a robot, but if he is conscious, he probably legitimately doesn't remember what had happened. And a big part of this is, I think, you know, again, right, like with now, they're trying to take away more and more of our rights. So I think the end game with all the school shootings and stuff like this, you know, was to take away the right to bear arms for everyone. And that's really dangerous because we all know, I mean, the more every single day we find out more and more about the government, their lies and stuff. So if they were to take away our guns, we have no way to protect ourselves. And they're trying to, you know, pull this police state crap, and it's really scary to see. And that's one kind of result that I think they're trying to get out of that. And another one, like a big thing for me is, like I said, going back to the kids. You know, Disney movies back in the day, filled, and the symbolism runs their, you know, these satanic occult people. They're all about symbolism, and it's predictive programming, and it's programming like The Simpsons is predictive program. Somehow, you know, shit comes true in some of their earlier shows. They know they plan this stuff out, and they're telling you because for some reason there's a rule that they have to tell us what they're going to do before they do it. They've done it with 9/11. They've done it with so many of big events. For some reason that it gives them the power to, because consent, for some reason, is a very big deal because we have free will. So in order for them they're evil, right? So in order for them to carry out these tasks against crimes against humanity, they have to, quote unquote, have our consent. So if they show us what they're going to do, they even did it with the Kobe Bryant crash with the helicopter in that cartoon years ago. You know, I mean, they're telling you what they're going to do, and all these celebrities are deep into this stuff, and all these sacrifices that they get power from, and they also get power from instilling fear in everybody, negative emotions.
Gotcha. Do you guys, either one of you guys, know more about the cartoon and the Kobe Bryant thing?
I have seen it. I didn't know about it until it happened, and I saw it after
Yeah,
the
me
fact.
too. Yeah.
So, but again, I don't know how I would have seen it beforehand. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I agree with everything that he just said. And to also something that I've brought up already in our show, to bring into modern day, is the 2-ball cane, and how that's the Facebook logo for, you know, where originally was for where Freemasons meet. You know,
Right.
and now that's their logo for Facebook, and they're like throwing it right in your face, like, "Hey, ha 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 ha!"
What about the
You know,
Google
and
Chrome one, the 666.
right, yep, or Apple's App Store logo, or you know, we had a whole episode where we talked about all the different logos.
Yeah, and they're putting it in your face every day. So that's another form of mind control. When you're bombarded with symbols, it subconsciously it warps your brain, it warps your mind, it warps your subconscious to accept it when it comes, and that's another really dangerous thing that they're trying to do. And I have a couple of ideas about certain things that they're trying to do. One, I don't want to get into it too much, but I believe on some level why they were pushing the transgender movement so hard is because of this. Okay, and they're going after the kids. You see, they're putting these, you know, these young little kids, 7, 8, 9 years old, on TV, getting them TV shows, having them dress up and trying to get all these other kids around the world to accept this. And parents are accepting it.
Yeah, look at Dwayne Wade.
Kids don't know what they are at that young. Like, what was it? Charlize Theron, I think it was like her 3 or 4 year old son or whatever, told her that she, or supposedly told her that he wants to be a girl or whatever. Yeah. That is not a natural. It's, for some people it is, and some people are born, but I think they're really trying to push it because for the most part I believe that's a learned behavior, and there's a couple of agendas with that. You know, one could be a depopulation where you're basically sterilizing people, and it's not to confuse people and confusing the kids. You know, when you confuse the kids and you warp the minds of the young, that carries out into the future. So they're trying to create a certain world. It's a sick world of basically everything that is wrong. You know, if not natural.
You gonna have to cut it because of that?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I'm looking at the camera recording us, just making sure we're good.
But I had that topic that he had touched on before. I actually threw something out there before when we discussed this idea before, because I sort of agree with what you just said. But one of the ideas that I have of why this may be happening is I'm a believer in the Anunnaki, and I'm a believer that the Anunnaki may have been a one species, and that they're trying to push the idea that, you know, a one world, one species, there's no male and female, it's just homogenous, to get back towards what they consider to be their gods.
Right.
A little bit about
that's
this,
Bacham right there.
about this mind control. There's a lot of the satanic ritual abuse plays a big part into this. That's a part of how you traumatize the mind, because your mind cannot comprehend ritualistic abuse like that. It happens, but you can't. It's like almost like you can't keep reliving that experience, so your mind will create like a self barrier for it, for this altar that it creates, and the altar has no remembrance of, you know, who you normally are. There's people whose altars are Satanists. That's one of their altars is a Satanist. Somebody like a Miley Cyrus, like normally she seems like a nice person, regular, but one of her altars would be a Satanist. If you look at some of her stuff, you could tell that they've totally dug her out and abused her. There's a lot.
One thing with, you're right. And one thing I'll just interject real quick. Reading like Beyonce and Lady Gaga's and Ho and Nicki Minaj, they talk about their alter egos and they call them demons. Like literally, they call them demons, but they also they said they can't perform the way they do without them. So there's some kind of really weird mind control ritual, satanic thing that they're doing with this.
There's interviews with, that's a great point. There's interviews of basketball players, sports stars, musicians, entertainers staring off into space out of nowhere, just randomly. Go look that up. And it's very interesting.
The Al Roker one trips me out.
Yeah,
because the trigger word there was Holy Ghost.
They say the girl said Holy Ghost, and he just was gone.
And it's funny because you see Matt Lauer and the other woman, like they're trying not to look at him. Like if you look at her face is slightly turned away from him so that she can not see him out of her peripheral vision, because they know what it is.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that's on TV is meant to trigger you.
Yeah,
to trigger you, and it meant to
Is this all something that goes back to my foundation of why all this stuff exists? Does it come down to money and depopulation, or is it something bigger than that?
It's a part of it. It's a little bigger than that, because it's not just money and depopulating, because if you're just going to kill everybody anyway, why put so much money into all these experiments to control these people? Well, right. Well, they already make money off of us. The reason for the experiments are, there's a lot of money in people that control other people. So like even somebody like a Vince McMahon that owns a company and he's like in charge of the wrestlers. There's a lot of power in that. Making somebody a star, putting your money behind this guy. It's like you're using people as like commodities. So with these mind control experiments, it's deeper than that. It's to fracture the mind and create a slave to do whatever you want that person to do. You have
whether
control.
it's a mass shooting, whether it's get other people hooked on a certain drug, whatever it is.
There's many different agendas.
Especially what, James?
Especially drugs.
The drug thing, yeah, and that's where like the music comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Where music kind of glorifies drug use. I mean, even the most innocent one with weed, you know what I mean, gets pushed so heavy in music. They want to just make sure that even if you're smart enough to not be coked out and on LSD all week long, that you're somehow dumbed down just a little bit. Because ultimately, even if I love marijuana, right, the effect of it is I am not as nimble and as quick in my thought process as I am when I am not smoked out, right? So it behooves somebody that's not as smart as me, or it needs me to not be intelligent at that time and just be kind of pushed in a certain direction. It makes sense that they'd want me to be so heavily dosed, if you will. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Well, they're going after the subconscious, man. That's what they're trying to do.
Right.
And it takes time. They're not worried about the time that it takes. They're going after the subconscious. Right. So you're seeing all these images, and maybe you get into a situation where you're at a party or something, and someone shows you, offers you this drug or whatever, it's cocaine or whatever, and all this pre-programming from all these symbols, and what you're just bombarded with from the media and stuff, especially younger kids, they're going to be more apt to want to try it. They've normalized it so much,
right?
And who's listening to most of these, most pop music is kids between the ages of 12 and 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
A lot of these experiments are done underground, and it represents the subconscious mind. But what I believe is happening now is I believe that there are a lot of social experiments going on as we speak, where these experiments that have been underground and in these deep underground military bases have now come up to the surface, and they are now experimenting on people in real time. And
I think that's the evolution of that MK Mind Control, like you're saying. It's just evolving into now it's becoming, more out in the open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so I think what we were trying to do here is sort of talk on the why, about the whole mind control aspect of it to begin with. Mm-hmm. I think originally the why behind it was Manchurian Candidate, like legit what that movie sort of put out there. I think the movie in the 50s sort of was after they gave up on the idea, or maybe they even used this to Manchurian Candidate. But then they figured out we can take this entire principle and apply it to all society and control everybody. And it really goes back to the document called Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, which I harp on people to read this document. And it's a very technical document, A lot of people don't understand what it is, but it is literally the war manual on how they subjugated us and control us completely. And the MKUltra and the mind control portion of it is just the element that goes along with the total control. Because that document, what that document says, in a nutshell, I'm going to boil it down. It basically is the document of all the inputs that they need to control society. And I talked about this before, and you had challenged me on it, and I didn't really give that great of an answer on it, where I had said that, 2 + 2 = 4, and if you want to end up at 4, you have to have 2 and 2 as your input. And in order to do that, you have to have willingness of people and certain events to happen in order to affect that. Because everything that is like water is H2O. That can be affected. You can take 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen and smash it together and create water. But you can't just like tell somebody to do something, because it just doesn't work that way. You have to influence them. You have to make them think that they want to do it. Because generally speaking, unless it's done out of fear, people don't do anything unless they subconsciously think that that's what they want to do. So the mind control, in conjunction with the inputs that they have from credit cards, UPC symbols, and all these other things, used together controls society and lets us go where they want us to go. I mean, the last 3 weeks we've spent thinking that Kim Jong-un is dead. And now they're trying to tell us that he's alive, but they don't show us any videos or anything. It's all part of the same thing. Like, oh, we're not ready to have that happen yet. The world is a stage and everything's a play. And we're not at Act 4 yet. We're only on Act 2.
One of the phrases is Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Yeah.
That's a trigger. That's a trigger one. Another one is there's a book called The Catcher in the Rye. And the guy that shot John Lennon had that book with him. And Lee Harvey Oswald also had that book with him. Lee Harvey Oswald was the guy that shot Kennedy, or that they said that shot Kennedy. So there's something to that.
Holden Caulfield is the name of the main character in that book that I'm very familiar with. It's one of my favorites, actually.
Okay, so I think that there's, I think that books have also been used as ways to trigger the mind to do, to think certain ways or to do certain things. It could be a part of this as well.
Right.
Got it.
One last I'll interject with is going back to the why they're doing this.
Right.
It seems like the elitists, the globalists, right? You see guys right now like Bill Gates. We're not going to get back to normal until every single person on the planet gets. The Georgia Guidestones, they want 500 million people around the planet. They want to reduce the population that much. A lot of people talk about this. Kissinger talks about this. But with the mind control, when you control people's minds, you desensitize them and not want to fight back. And they know, because they say there's only like 8,000 of people around the world that really control this global agenda, right? Control agenda. There's 7 billion people in the world. So they stand no chance if all wake up and revolt and rebel and fight back. And they know this. Yep. So that's why they have to use these techniques down and keep us asleep so that we won't fight back, and they can continue their child sacrifice, whatever it is, all the sick shit that they're doing, the evil occult stuff that they're doing, and just keep control. And this might go back to like the Anunnaki kind of thing, where they controlled humans back then and had them mine for gold or whatever the story was. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Getting scared because a lot of people are waking up.
I always go back to that too.
Yeah, and that's what we do on the show. We want to encourage everybody, listen to what we've been talking about, the four of us, and do your own research. Find out about these different projects that were initiated. Start there. Find out what Project Paperclip was, and think of, and do some research on MKUltra. And we even brought up other ones, right? We brought up IBYSS and Oak Tree, and Project Gabriel. Go check those out, and just see, and then you'll understand where we're coming from when we're talking about this stuff, and how it really is all one thing, one initiative, and the initiative is control you, right? Get you to do our deeds. If you have a life inside of that somehow, fine, but it's not yours, right? And we'll take it whenever we want. you know, and it's crazy when you talk like that, you know. And I'm talking like that because I'm trying to instill the thought and invigorate the thoughts of the viewers out there that are watching this, you know, because I'm thinking like that, like listening to these three talk, I'm like you guys. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of information. You know, what do I believe? You know, start looking at these projects. Start there, and then start.
Well, a lot of it, yeah, a lot. There's a lot of unleaked and declassified CIA documents that are proving all this stuff, and it's a Google search away. And right now, Google is a little bit uncensored in a couple of ways. I mean, you search up any of these terms and you go to, I mean, it pops right up and you can look at legit documents. So this stuff is not just hearsay. I mean, you can, like literally 10 seconds and you can find real CIA government documents telling you this stuff.
Right. And you heard it here.
That's what I wanted to sort of focus on today is that, and I know that we're talking about 1953, 1960s, and this, that, and stuff, but we're talking about these things because this is what you can verify.
Right.
You know, and obviously there's
conspiracy facts.
I mean, right. Obviously.
Yeah, remember, these were conspiracy theories back then.
Right.
So, and they became real, and they were proven to be fact now. So, you know, the term conspiracy theory in the first place was coined by the CIA and weaponized by them after the JFK assassination to shut people up about, because a lot of people knew, like, you know, this happened. So there's something else to the story. So they weaponized the term conspiracy theory for that reason, to make people look crazy. So if you're called a conspiracy theorist, all it is that you're trying to find the real truth, because we've never been told the real truth, and we just want to know what's going on.
But think about this real quick. We could use all this electronics right here to cook this up into this YouTube show, right?
Yeah.
Think about what they can use this electronics to cook up our brain to do.
Yeah, no doubt. They can make you make a YouTube channel. James, man, do you have any last thoughts that you want to get out there? Because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Is there something that we didn't touch on that maybe you want to get into?
No, I would just urge people to, like you said, not take our word for it, but go search. I mean, like I said, all these pop music videos and all these movies, you just start trying to be conscious and look for the symbolism.
Okay.
You can Google the government, symbols for all this stuff. It's all verified, and just keep an open eye and just watch out for this stuff, because it's and now that you have some kind of information about what this might be like, and YouTube videos, there's videos on YouTube, real videos back in like the 50s and 60s showing you the stuff. So I mean, you can find the proof for yourself very easily, but just have an open mind and do your own research and just look for the symbols. It's all in the symbolism.
Yeah, agreed. James, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know we kept you a little longer than we originally wanted, but yeah, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for appearing and stuff. And we'll be sure to reach out. I'm sure this won't be the last time the Wise Conspiracy Show and James Hart connect. All right.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Take care now.
All right, guys.
Bye. All right. So with you guys, shout out to James, the guest who was on the phone, man. Really knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, he was.
I hope the audio comes through. Well, he had a good speaking voice, so hopefully that translates in the video for everybody. Little dead spots here and there, but y'all can deal with that. When it came to MKUltra, I was intrigued by this because, like I say, I'm a pretty headstrong guy, and I like to think that I have my own thoughts and I rock to my own vibe. And that very well might be, but when I hear things like that, I definitely take issue with it. So that's why I wanted to chop it up with you guys and hear, why they created it, what it is, and, so I can identify it myself when I see it out there. That's kind of like why I wanted to talk about it. So, so Gross, to wrap up MKUltra and to put a little bow on it for the people, what would you say right now?
Well, I would say that it's something that the people are not hip to. The people are not well educated on mind control or this topic. It's something that most people are going to laugh at first because they're not educated. And I think that knowledge is the power. And the more you start looking into these experiments and these projects, you start to see how they're connected. and you start to see how there is a trail of breadcrumbs almost for those that want to know. You know, if you really care about your family and the world around you, you might be interested in this stuff, okay? But if not, you're not going to really resonate with it, because it's usually the people that are very selfish and very stuck in their ways. They're not ready to have any new ideas about, they already have their set ideas on how things are. So I think that this information is more for the people that are going through this type of trauma, and for the people that want to know or that already know and want to know more. So I think that that's what I'm trying to do, is for the people that want to know, and because it's very real, it's a very sensitive topic. So I think that the more we look into it and the more we do it together, and like Monster always brings up, the unity, continuing to have that unity with each other, I think we can overcome this mind control of the masses, and we can beat it. But the only way we're going to beat it is if we know it's happening first. How can we, how can we fight against a silent weapon if we don't even know the war's happening?
Yeah, that's why the when you guys were talking about the consent and the predictive things that they'll put out, and when I say they, I guess I'm talking about anybody who's behind any of these agendas, right? Because I don't know who they are per se.
Private schools have been involved. Secret aspects of the military have been involved. Different colleges and hospitals, mental institutions, movie sets. So all around, I mean, it is a conspiracy. It is a group of people plotting against other people in secrecy. I mean, that happens. Right. So it's definitely that. It's just it's been also proven. It's been also documented. Even Bill Clinton came out and said that these experiments happened, and they had to apologize to the people for it.
That's crazy. The whole consent thing, again, that one gets me. You know what I mean? Because it's like twisted evil, right? Because it's like you're living by a code.
Well, if you go into the military, you sign a contract.
You know what I'm saying?
If you go into the military and you don't read the fine print, and they can use you or your family for any type of experiments for 7 generations.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Why not?
Wow.
I mean, even the consent thing, everybody knows that it's BS. Every single person that scrolls that thing knows, oh man, I'm agreeing to things that I don't want to agree to. But you do it anyway because you want to use the service for free. I mean, whoever read the terms of service for Facebook, I mean, from time to time you see these people, they post this thing like, I'm not giving you consent to use any of my images and this, that. Get lost. You already gave them consent when you signed up for your account.
Right.
I mean, go back and read what you consented to. You have your head in your hands. You'd be like, oh my God. And, to go back to Grills' point about the unity message, I think a lot of people think about that as, trying to force people into loving one each other because of the whole politics thing. But what I say to them is, how are we going to sit down and talk about how these same people who are Republicans and Democrats did these programs to do these things to you? How are we going to sit down and seriously have this conversation when all you want to talk about is, no, it's Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, and I hate this person because he's a Democrat, and I hate this person because he's a Republican. And what I'm trying to tell you is they both worked hand in hand together with the same money that their parents, who were the previous generation, approved in Congress, that they were handed down to them from the secret societies that they got from Yale University, and then they spent their whole life following the symbols for, and then they're now doing this for their kids, and so on and so forth. We're just trapped in this vicious cycle. And how are we ever going to sit down and explain this to people, like we're doing here, if we're still constantly battling over the bread and circus, really?
I want to elaborate on something real quick, because he's absolutely right. And a lot of these people that we look up to, that we look for guidance to lead us, right? These governors, these mayors, these presidents, politicians, they are handlers. And a handler is somebody that controls the mind control slave. And a lot of the entertainers in Hollywood, they have handlers, right? So there's always a handler that will, be directing traffic, right? So people need to also be aware of that a lot of the people that we have given our energy to and given our power away to are actually handlers to these experiments. And it sounds, it sounds wild, but do the homework, do the research, you'll find how all these people are connected. And if the people knew what the government, what the people at the top were actually doing, they wouldn't support them like they do. It wouldn't be so simple. It's just knowledge is the power. And the people that are Democrat and Republican and that think that that matters to anything, they don't have enough knowledge to know what's really going on. So this is also a big wake-up call for people to get their head out of the sand and stop worrying about Democrat or Republican and worry about what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Man,
Moral people with good intentions. Oh,
it's almost like the people are unwilling to admit that they're all bad, that they're all wrong on something. We don't, we have to agree, it's like.
Well, when your mind's being controlled, what do you expect?
Absolutely, absolutely.
There you go.
And at the same time, some of these, these presidents and politicians, they are really not in power like we think. They are also a slave, or they are also a victim to this trauma-based mind control. They are not at the top of the pyramid, not even close. The presidents, I believe, often feel helpless in a lot of this, and they feel like they can't really do much about anything. They just have to play their part.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's common knowledge, but a common thought is, the president is just whatever. That's just the puppet.
I think we need to take our hate, and I think we need to take the hate away from the president, and move the hate away completely, because hate is not going to get us through this.
I'll bring it completely 360 here for us. People often talk about polarizing presidents, JFK, Trump, Clinton, all these different people. But in the last 100 years, and we talked about this today, one person and one president that nobody ever speaks about affected our lives tremendously, and that's Truman. He's the one who authorized.
They made a movie of him.
He's the one who authorized MKUltra, and he's also the one who dropped the bomb on Japan. Two things that had major, major impacts in our lives that we've been spending the last hour talking about, yet nobody puts him into consideration. When talking about presidents or evil things or things that have happened, nobody considers him. And he wasn't even technically elected. He took office because of it.
It's a really good point.
I think the reason is because he looked at more like a hero, right? The one that got back because we got Pearl Harbor, and then so we dropping bombs.
But it also leads you, nobody wants you to think about what program he put into play or any of that. It leads you away from the water. You're not going to drink the stream if you're over there in the field.
Right. So I know we could probably talk about MKUltra and mind control probably for another couple hours, really, But let's wrap it up, though. Might give you a chance just to let's take us home on MKUltra real quick.
Well, like I said earlier, that the MKUltra is really the launching point back in the 50s for these experiments that have continued on. I mean, a lot of people are familiar with the Tuskegee Airmen experiment, which happened over a year ago. And we just can't be naive. And one of the reasons why I feel it's important to put all this out there is we cannot be naive to what's happening right now. Whether it be Facebook, television, movies, songs. We talked about how they play the same song every hour on the hour for 24 hours just to hook you into it. And it's total garbage with a garbage message. All of these things are having a tremendous effect on us now. And it's really important for people to do the research and do the knowledge, have the knowledge of what has actually occurred already, because I know there's a saying that you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And that's what doing the research does for you. It allows you to see, wow, if the government is willing to go through this much and to give these airmen syphilis and to see what happens to them, what are they might be willing to do to me in 2020? Right. And the only reason why I say this is because you got to get ahead of the curve. I mean, I spent the last decade dealing with a lot of people who were so-called preppers, who were prepping for this movement to be underground and to survive, the apocalypse.
Right.
Except for the apocalypse came, and now they're out with their guns at Capitol buildings. And I guess it's under the guise that they're losing their rights, but weren't you prepping for this scenario to begin with?
Right.
So things And that's what I'm trying to tell people is this is all part of take a step back.
Right.
This is all part of the mind control. This is all part of the, are they prepping us for World War III? Are the sheep ready to shear?
Civil uprising.
Correct.
And all that stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Is it time to become the one world entity that's been moving towards?
Yeah, it's a awesome, intriguing perspective and thoughts. And remember, some of the stuff we talked about today was factual stuff that we were just kind of bringing to light. So with that said, I want to get into one of my favorite things. You already know what it is. It is the rapid fire. I got a couple things written down. These guys have no idea what I wrote down unless they was cheating and looking at my paper. So, Grills, if I say to you, now this is going to sound a little outworldly and stuff, and it's right up your alley, all right? What's your take on time travel?
Time
Possible
travel.
or not?
Oh, it's absolutely possible.
Tell me about it.
Well, I believe that even the Nazis were working with time travel.
Okay.
With the bell that they were creating and that they were engineered. But there's, also, how do we know that we're not time travelers?
I don't feel like I'm a time traveler.
Well, let me put it this way. If I'm able to have a dream, and then 3 days later, what I just dreamed about 3 days prior actually happens,
Right.
am I not a time traveler?
Could you just be telling the future?
Well, I guess that's true. But I do believe that the time traveling technologies do exist on this planet. Absolutely, 100%.
You do.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Interesting take. Now, believing that, right, do you think that the old adage like Back to the Future, you go back and you change one thing, it changes everything? Do you believe that or no?
Now you're going into parallel universes, different dimensions, different realities.
Right, and it kind of touches on that. So what's your 30-second take on that? If I'm just asking you, okay, fine, you could time travel, but I'm going to change one thing. This person's not going to meet this person. Boom.
Well, it depends because, I'm also not a scientist.
Right.
But I think it's, if you're traveling back in time and you're altering something, and something is, and then it has to lead up to now, it's possible. I mean, but now you're also talking about alternate worlds or realities,
Sure.
whereas you could go back in time and do something and the same effect will still happen because it's meant to happen. So it's hard to say.
Okay.
It's hard to say.
Fair enough.
It could be either or. Both are possible.
Yeah. No, I get it. Mons, what's your take on time travel?
I'm actually a believer.
You are?
Yeah, I usually I not on purpose, but I find that a lot of these rapid fires that I'm on the other side of the argument of Grills usually, but this is actually one I'm actually on that side of it. And one of the things is what you brought up is aside from the whole premise of Back to the Future, obviously. But even before that movie, I think it was embedded in me the idea that if we did travel back in time, that it would alter the future. That if you altered an event in the past, that it alters. Now, I'm also not a scientist or a quantum mechanic physicist, so I don't know whether or not that's true or not, but that's sort of ingrained in me that that's a thing. And one of the other things that, and this is a hypothesis of mine that I've had, you know the whole idea where we don't really know about the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid, like what is behind that and everything?
Exactly right.
What if it's a marker that was built by time travelers and we just don't have an understanding yet of why they built it or what that marker actually is for?
Yeah, the how is so intriguing to me just alone with the pyramid, the how. And with the Sphinx and it being giant like that. We touched on this in comments. Comment below. We touched on this in comments how like we think that giants were on this earth at one point or another.
Right.
And the Sphinx just looks like a giant pet to me. You know what I'm saying? Very interesting stuff. So let me ask you this. And I talk about time travel and it kind of puts my mind on a certain lane and then I go from there, right? So we talk a lot about a higher being like God, right? So he created everything. And if you're looking at the story of the Bible and the different stories that it tells, right, you wouldn't think that Neanderthals existed. So I asked Grills, what's your take when I talk about were there Neanderthals on this earth?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we evolved.
I don't think we evolved. I think we were genetically manipulated.
So we were Neanderthal manipulated to be human?
Well, I don't know if that, well, see, this goes into a lot of the Anunnaki stuff. But, you know, I'm still uncovering a lot of this, this ancient knowledge of where we come from.
Pondering. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's just, it's something I'm also very interested in. And I think that, I don't know if we come from, you know, Neanderthals. We might have been really intelligent, high vibrating beings at one point, and we were de-evolved. I think that's possible, and that, or possibly the Neanderthal caveman type of creatures that were here, maybe they were, you know, genetically modified a little bit, tweaked with this extraterrestrial DNA, and now we have what you'd call the human. But it's, you know, there's a lot of different theories on that, and a lot of different possibilities, but, you know, I'm very interested in it.
So you think Neanderthal, yes, they walked the earth?
Yeah, I think it's possible, yeah. Why not?
Okay. What's your take on that?
Yeah, definitely. Neanderthals and hominids. So the basic thing of what we're talking about here is what science likes to call the missing link.
Right.
So the idea of the missing link is that evolution has this chain that's easy to follow, that the skeletal remains and the science behind it shows this evolutionary path. But there's a missing link. And the missing link that scientists don't want to put in there is what we can do right now. We can manipulate by DNA right now. Different animals, different things. We can actually create a child that you would want right now.
Color dog, the whole nine.
So if you take the idea of that, right, and you say what Grills had just said, and you put that back into the missing link and say, what if all these hominins and Neanderthals were manipulated, and that's what caused this evolution to happen? That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Got you. All right, so how about this one? And now this one, just because I think about time travel, and I think about these different things, and think about going back in time and seeing certain things, you know, I've never lived through a president assassination, right? But there's been two, right? So, with those assassinations, you know how they always talk about Lincoln, Kennedy, and the comparisons with their assassinators, right?
Right.
Talking about mind control and all this other stuff and the setup, right? Does it go back that far? Were they compelled?
In my opinion, yes. Because, and right away, laymen will say, you're out of your mind. Like, that's crazy. What could possibly be the connection?
Right.
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
We started it on episode 1. We had the plate here in front of us, which showed the Freemason symbol. These things go back hundreds and thousands of years to the Crusades. These ideas are not born from now. This is the reason why. I mean, it's the protection of all these ideas of... unless you start from the beginning, you're never going to get to the end, I guess. Does that make any sense? I mean, it just... You know, you have to take the deep dive. You can't skim the surface and start thinking... I don't know, that's my best answer for you there. I mean, it just... Unless you can't just... You're not going to see the bottom of the pool by looking at the reflection of the top.
Right. You guys have to understand the reason why I love rapid fire so much is because there's not too many times where I can get these guys to like stumble a little bit, have to think about what they have to say. So that's why I love it so much. But Grills, what's your take on that? Like, my question is, were those two assassinators manipulated to do what they did, or were they free will acts?
No, I think that there was definitely a plan, agenda behind it.
And why the similarities between the Lincoln and... Do you know what I'm talking about? How there's like
there's,
the 18 different similarities?
Yes.
But that's because they have this need, and our guest spoke about it again today. They just have this need to foreshadow. Yeah. That's what the symbolism is. Yeah. That's why I say there's no such thing as a coincidence.
What you pondering there, buddy?
Well, I believe that these could very well be sleeper agents that were specifically put there. John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't think that's by chance. The three.
Right, the three names.
The three names and the it's just a lot of I don't believe in a coincidence. I don't believe in that.
I'm gonna put up the graphic that has all the similarities right now for everybody anyway. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, I to ask you guys that is great for me because I think about this stuff, but to get you guys' input is very interesting. And talking about what we talked about today, it like, why would you get so crazy? Like, from what I know, right, like Kennedy was beloved. Lincoln freed the slaves. It's like, wait a minute. You know what I mean?
There's a lot about these presidents and these families that the people don't know.
It also has a lot to do with geopolitical maneuvering. And we talked about this before, about how the people that finance this actually finance both sides.
Right.
Like, and an example of this would be how World War I started. The powers that be, the bankers and the different forces that pull at this, wanted World War II to start.
Right.
But they needed an impetus of it. So they killed Archduke Ferdinand. And that was the springing off point for World War I. World War II, for our involvement of it, was sprung off because the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor. Now you can go online and find plenty, there's been several books written about this, about how supposedly we knew and allowed it to happen. Because in order to jump off into the war, we needed a jumping off point. And the same thing happened again in Vietnam, which was another false flag incident. And this is why people begin to not trust the government. Because, now here we are, again, another geopolitical event. We need to get into it, but we need a triggering point. So they said that our boat was attacked by the Vietnamese when it never was. And the next thing you know, it's rah, 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 let's go to war. And I want to caution people because from my point of view, the same exact thing is happening right now with China. And what I'm hearing sort of rumbling with this propaganda machine that we've been talking about the television all day is China did it. That virus came from China. Chinese food places aren't even open right now because they're facing so much racism. So it's my opinion that sort of what you just said and the manifestation of it now is moving in that direction towards World War III against China, unfortunately.
They'll always have an enemy that's not the real enemy. People will always think one day it's the Chinese, the next day it's the Muslims, and they're always going to try to pin the people against each other. But I said it last episode, I believe that the people of this world, most of the people, not all the people, but most of the people are nothing like the leaders that run us. Nothing. And until we start to get hip to this information and until we feel as we have an obligation as humans to know these things, because we know who all the movie stars are. We know who all the sports players are. We know about all of that.
Sure.
Why doesn't enough people know about this stuff? And I don't think it's because they don't care. It's just they don't know it's there. And it's to get emotionally invested and to want to know more.
There you go. And there it is. I think we're wrapping up episode 8 very lovely right here. Comment below. Even if you want to start a conversation, let us know. Do it right there. Subscribe to the channel. Watch episode 9 when it comes out. It's going to be the grand finale of our inaugural season of this thing. Yes, inaugural. Yes, we're coming back. Bigger and better than ever. So, without further ado, from my man Grills, from my good friend and buddy and family member Monster, it is Gabriel, Finally TV. Why is Conspiracy? Peace out, y'all.